Well, greetings, everybody. Welcome once again to the RecPoker podcast. I'm your host, Steve Fredlund. And as always, we are sponsored by Running Aces Racetrack and Casino. This is episode 153, and we have a little bit of a change of plan. So we did an interview with Adam Friedman, and we're going to air part one of that this week, part two next week. The plan this week was actually to do audio from our first ever live meet and greet. On Monday, October 28th, we hung out at Oedipal's Brewing Company. We actually did a recording of a podcast. We weren't sure how the audio would go. Turns out it was pretty rough. So it's a really cool place, really high ceilings, not very acoustically sound. And as we re-listened to the podcast, it was really pretty tough, and it would have been kind of painful for you all to listen to. So some good stuff in there. We had a chance to interview Steve Webb, who is one of our RecPoker Nation guys. He went pretty deep, ended up with $39,000 out of the Fall Poker Classic main event, an $1,100 buy-in. So we interviewed him, but we just couldn't really hear it very well. So we're going to have him on at another time, and we'll talk more. But we just had a great time at this meet and greet. We had a number of people show up, so thanks to those of you who did. Super fun to get to know each other on a bit more, a deeper level. And we're looking at doing something again, probably at the same place, and even doing like a play and learn where we'll actually have some cards out, we'll play some hands, and we'll talk about those hands and learn a little bit. Should be a good time. So watch for details. If you're not part of the newsletter, I would recommend go to rec.poker. At the bottom of the page, you can sign up for our newsletter. I'm not going to give away your email addresses to anybody, but if you sign up there, then you'll get the regular newsletter. That's probably the best way to stay informed. We try to update the Facebook group. We try to update Twitter, all of those things. But easily the best way is either through the website or getting on that email newsletter. So do that. I want to mention Player of the Week at Running Aces, the top four getting bonus lammers. It was a short week this week because of the big tournament they had, but Jeff Jorgensen, Troy Withers, Doug Sanders, and Tony Wilson took down the top four spots. A couple of other quick announcements. This Wednesday, October 30th, from 8 to 9:30 p.m., we're going to be discussing Poker Tells. We're going to be watching some video of things and discussing those things. This is a conversation that you can be part of if you're a member of the RecPoker community. Even if you're on a free trial basis, you can plug in there and check it out. So go to rec.poker, figure out how to become a member, even on a trial basis, and you can be part of that conversation. And then we record it and we make it available back to members. So that's this Wednesday. Next Wednesday, the November 6th, we'll be looking at a hand history, a number of hand histories from Chris Jones will be leading that conversation. And then our third monthly Poker Stars home game next Wednesday, November 6th, 8 o'clock p.m. Central Time. Make sure you check out the website. You can go to home game and find out the details on how to register for that deal. It's always a super fun time. So check that out. Also, quick, NFL Survivor Pool. We still have 11 people going on to next week. So congratulations to those of you who are still in that. Go to rec.poker. Check out how to access the Discord channel, which is just a free chatting discussion area, which is super fun. Check out the membership site and just stay plugged in however you can. So as I mentioned, we did a conversation with Adam Friedman, who is a three-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner. He's very good at Texas No Limit Hold'em. I covered him in the MSPT when he actually won the MSPT in Cleveland, but he's really most known for his mixed games. And a number of you out in RecPoker Nation have been saying, let's talk about mixed games. And I'm not a mixed game player, so it's very difficult for me to do that. So I rounded up a few people who play mixed games to conduct more of the interview, more of the discussion. And Adam was gracious enough to give us an hour and a half of his time, which is phenomenal. And so we broke it out into two podcasts. So this week you're going to hear part one with Adam Friedman. And then next week you'll hear, obviously, part two. So without further ado, here is that conversation that we had with Adam Friedman. All right, guys. Well, as promised, we are here with three-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner Adam Friedman, who was willing to take some time out of his schedule. Now, I know most of you out there know who Adam is, but for those of you who don't, let me give you a little bit of his credentials to prove that we don't just bring anybody onto the show. I actually had a chance to meet Adam a few months ago. I was doing some poker reporting for the MSPT, and Adam was out at the Jack in Cleveland, where the two prior events at the Jack, at the main events, Adam took third, and he took third
And this time he did a little better. He won the thing. So I had a chance to chat with Adam a little bit. He's got like $350,000 in MSPT, 13 main event cashes. But where you really know him from is probably from the World Series of Poker. He has 32 World Series of Poker cashes for just under $2 million. He's got 3 bracelets. One of them was in a $5,000 7-card stud high-low 8 or better event. And the other 2 were back-to-back. The last 2 years, he won the $10,000 Dealer's Choice 6-handed events. He's also had another second place in the 1,500 7-card stud event. And this year he finished 150th in the main event. So he does know how to play Hold'em as well as all of these other mixed games. So first of all, Adam, just thank you so much, man. You're kind of poker royalty. I appreciate you taking the time.
I don't know about that, but I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So let me start off. This is just a Q&A thing, but I'm just, as a guy who doesn't play mixed games, I'm just kind of curious right away, when you talk about all the accolades of things that you've accomplished over the years and you're still a pretty young guy, what stands out, I guess, as of right now, as far as like the one thing or the one period of time that's really just you're most proud of so far?
I tell people this all the time. In fact, I said it after when I won my 3rd bracelet this summer. My number one thing by far, I've never been broke in poker. If you're playing this for a living, the first thing above all else, you need to stay in money. Plain and simple. If you don't have money, you can't play. It's as simple as that. There have been several very, very talented players over the years. They have no idea how to manage money. They play over their heads. When they lose and they steam, they play much bigger than they're supposed to. They chase their losses. They just take the day off. The game's probably going to be there tomorrow. And that's one thing people never seem to learn, a lot of people. And you've seen a lot of really good players throughout the years. They've had to retire or they've had to borrow. Or they've had to get a backer of some sort. But just a lot of stories. I've seen way too many examples. Some people I'd rather probably not mention because, it's a sore spot for a lot of people when their name gets mentioned about people that have either gone busted. So
is that something just kind of how you're wired? You've always been good at managing money, or is that something you had to be intentional about?
Well, I'm very fortunate. My dad's been able to teach me a lot of money lessons. I'm very lucky I had a tutor in that regard. And I've made some mistakes. So I don't think no one's going to be perfect in this regard, but I've been very good. I don't think I've ever really repeated anything. I don't gamble in the pit. I don't sports. I bet lunch bets. I bet dinner bets with sports. If I'm with a buddy or whatever, and we're at the like for Thursday night, I got a buddy or Thursday night football. We're literally betting. We're literally betting $20 on first quarter, first half in the game. So to me, that's not. That's just like whoever loses basically paying the dinner bill, which is nothing.
Right.
So I don't bet. It's not like I'm one of these guys who bets 500 a game or whatever, 1,000 a game for some people or whatever else people bet. It doesn't do anything for me.
All right. So let me prime the pump on the mixed game. So what, if it's even possible, what's your favorite mixed game? Like if you had an opportunity to play one game, what would it be?
That answer has switched so many times over the years. To me, it's like asking what's your favorite Beatles song. The answer switches every 3 minutes. What
is it today?
What it would be my favorite? Today. I'll say today it's Badusi and Badesi. Historically, it's 7-card stud, but unfortunately, the game has been losing its sight and popularity. I'm like considered a super young kid in 7-card stud still. But I think 7-card stud is the most fascinating limit game at all. It's the most intricate game, the most thought provoking game. But some people, they don't necessarily want to, delve into too much detail in some of these games. And I think it's truly a phenomenal game that's unfortunately been lost in popularity over the years. But hopefully we can bring 7-card stud back eventually. But who knows?
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Well, let's see who's on the panel. Who wants to fire away here? Carter Jones.
Yeah, Adam, thanks again. So just to kind of start it off, I think a lot of poker players, recreational players in particular, they know No Limit Hold'em. It's a game they know and a game they play. And I think people dabble in PLO, and there's a pretty decent crossover there. I think there's definitely people on this panel that do play mixed games. I play them and I love them. I've grown to love them a lot more and want to continue to learn. My first question is, which of the games do you think is a good place to start if you're going to go from being a no limit hold'em / PLO player and you're going to say, okay, let's explore mixed games? Where do you think is a good place to start and why?
So the first game or two I would start. I think if you're going with if you're coming from a no limit hold'em and pot limit Omaha background, I'd probably start with some of the basic horse games to start with. Specifically, I'd go with the flop game since you come from a flop background. I would probably stick with limit hold'em in Omaha or better. Like I said, me personally, like I said, I've been playing professionally since I was 20. Let's see, 22, 20. Or I'm sorry. Since I was 23, I take that back. But coming up, starting playing cards around 2001, 2002, I came predominantly from a limit hold'em background. Limit hold'em was the drug of choice back then that people played. But again, limit hold'em obviously is a much different game than no limit hold'em. I mean, unfortunately, you got to be able to show down as much. You can't get as creative for the most part. I mean, but aggression pays off like any other game. But if you generally keep playing better cards than somebody else who's playing cards from all over the place, in limit hold'em, you'll get rewarded much more than you would in no limit hold'em. Omaha to better, I'd say similar concepts. I mean, if you have an ideal, you know what you're supposed to be playing PLO, and when you're playing Omaha to better, like you start with a basic background. You generally want to play hands that are, it's. I think it's pretty easy to go in terms of what your starting hand requirements should be. And as you play, you see more flops. You see what hands people are playing with, what hands are losing with, and usually when you're playing in a game, the one thing I generally would tell a lot of people in general is, no matter what game you're playing in, there's usually a consistent winner or two in that game overall that you play with. Whether it's a game you play in once a week, twice a week, bi-monthly, whatever it is. Usually there's a consistent winner or two what they're doing. Try to pay attention to what that person is doing. Why is that person winning in the game? But then see the people who were consistently losing. Why are they losing? Are they playing too many hands? Are they just not folding early enough on the on the later streets when the double bets come and play on the turn river? Are they just consistently playing second best hands? Are they not paying attention to the boards? Are they not paying attention to the action that's going on? But like I said, it was easier for me. Like I said, so when people generally ask me, like getting back to the original question, it's my guess that limit hold'em in Omaha are the best. But granted, like I said, I come from a limit hold'em background initially, so I think it's very possible there might be other people coming from a no limit hold'em and PLO background. They might give you a different answer. But I believe those are probably the easiest games to initially start with and go from there. But I think you should try to really not try to learn more than one or two games at a time, because it can be very difficult. Certain concepts, whether it's basic or complex issues, if you try to learn 4, 5, 10 games at once, it can be very hard. Even over the years, I don't recall really trying to learn more than probably. I don't recall having to learn more than 2 games at a time. But yeah. So I mean, I guess that's the best I would say for that.
You have a follow-up, Carter?
Yeah, sure. So thank you. That's an awesome answer. So you mentioned that you started then with limit hold'em. What was it that brought you to the game of mix and took you away from the games that were more popular at that time, which it sounds like limit hold'em was that, and then a little bit of no limit mixed in there. What was the initial attraction to mix for you?
Well, like I said, I started playing, I guess, professionally in 2000, late 2005, early 2006. I dabbled in mix. I occasionally in 07 and 08. But I didn't predominantly start playing that really when I'm playing cash games really until about, what do I want to say, about 2010, 11, 12. So it wasn't really a while. Like I said, I initially came from a limit hold'em background in terms of playing cash. And then I went over to, and then when I started going to LA when games were predominant at Commerce all over the place, there were a million games going on there, unlike today where there's just not as much. It was all limit hold'em and no limit hold'em. And I just saw how much money people were making on no limit hold'em. So I progressed to no limit hold'em, and then eventually there was always a bunch of stud games going on. So if I couldn't get into a game right away, I'd try to play a little stud and try to get a feel for that. And then eventually I'm looking at mixed games over the years, and then just somehow I had a knack for playing a lot of games at once. I can't even give you a rhyme or reason really how it went. I'm not saying like I'm a true natural talent or anything like that, but I just seem to understand what the basic principles were in games. I've always been able to understand pretty quickly. Like I thought I knew what decent starting hands were, and I always tried playing tight and tried paying attention to who the winners in the games were, and try to learn from them.
Excellent. John Somsky, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm a big mixed game fan. I basically learned most of the mixed games online. Played every game PokerStars had to offer, at least a few thousand hands of every game before Black Friday.
Yeah, I remember that. That seems like in a galaxy far, far away.
Well, exactly. Well, and the issue is now the mixed games tend to be, particularly for the cash games, they tend to be spread at the lowest level is a mid-tier, middle limit game. When you're talking live, it's really, you can't find like a 4-8 or a 3-6 mixed game that people can get used to and get their feet wet. You can find that for just straight hold'em, and maybe you can find that for like an Omaha 8, but you're never going to find a Badoogie, you're never going to find Badesi, you're not going to find any of the other more out there games at that level. And you certainly can't hardly find them spread in a casino. So how would you suggest that a rec player with a limited budget who wants to start with small stakes games learn mixed games?
Well, I would say the best thing I would suggest too is you're from North Carolina, correct?
I'm from Minnesota.
Oh, Minnesota. Okay. Well, I mean, if there's a bunch of people in your community, if you can get to, go to someone's house and just start playing if you just invite, 4, 5, 6 guys, just invite them over to your house or or see if you can go to someone else's house. Start a weekly game. Play for $2, $4, or $4, $8. Like I said, if obviously, I think if you look in towns, if you're like whether it's Minnesota or somewhere down south, Midwest, it's going to be incredibly difficult to find. And I couldn't even tell you which casinos spread the smaller limit games. So I think the best you can do is just try to ask around, see who's interested. Like when you're in Minnesota, I assume you're near the Minneapolis area. So if you're at the Running Aces in the I'm drawing a blank in the other casino there.
Canterbury.
In Canterbury. Just ask around, see who might be willing to play once a week, whether it's meeting up at the casino or just meeting in a home game. Unfortunately, I think where we're at, obviously in 2019, is if you really want to happen, you probably got to do a lot of initiative. You just got to be willing to ask around and see who might be interested. Beyond that, it's unfortunately it's sort of sucks where we're at, but I that would be my best suggestion. Just ask around, see who's interested. You're going to obviously hear no much more than you are in yes, but it's like a numbers game, like with women. You're probably going to hear no more than you're going to hear yes, but all you got to do is just eventually just keep asking around and just go from there.
So then as a corollary to that question, in order to try to drum up business for all of the mixed games, what about playing mixed games will make you a better overall poker player? In other words, what from playing a mixed game is going to improve your Hold'em or your PLO game?
It's where I've been telling Hold'em players I tell like some of my friends who predominantly, if not exclusively, only play Nova Hold'em tournaments. I think they're out of their minds not to play mix. When I just started playing all the other games, I found noticeable improvements. Like I'm able somehow to take a concept that maybe I can't necessarily explain that and study it or better, helps me out in a No Limit Hold'em tournament or something when I'm playing No Limit Hold'em. This somehow helps me out in Badoogie. I don't know what it is. Maybe I find myself more nutted in certain spots. I just certain concepts, some stuff I can't even necessarily explain. You just see how certain concepts or certain things can actually correlate or translate to different games across the entire build. And just all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay. So if there's like a game maybe you're really good at, all of a sudden it's like, how could this necessarily translate to another game? So all you can really do is just play a ton of hands of almost every of the games that you're in, and then also you just start seeing tiny things like, I wouldn't have guessed that concept A could work in this game, but it's going to work in another game. Just somehow you just see things that just end up happening, that just end up working across multiple games, and some things don't have anything to do with one another. So, but that's when you just through trial and error mostly.
So as a mixed game rube, do you ever just find yourself playing a game and like forgetting what game you're playing? It seems like that's something that could easily happen.
No, I mean, like
just a momentary brain fart. Like, what am I playing here?
No, well, once in a blue moon, if I'm playing like out in LA or Bellagio, like if we're starting a game, whoever wins the high card, who puts the games in a certain order, once in a blue moon, they're not paying attention. They accidentally put Badusi and Badesi next to each other. So maybe you weren't paying attention that there was a game switch, and all of a sudden you find out you're on the second draw in Badusi, and you've got an ace and you've got a good 3 card like ace deuce 4 or something. You're like, oh crap, it's. So yeah, but no, I mean for the most part, I mean if you got 4 cards in your hand, it's pretty hard to excuse either Badugi or Omaha or Badugi or Omaha to better from like deuce 7 triple draw or something in that regards, or any stud game. So for the most part, people try to organize it to where 4 card draw games or Omaha. It's always going from like maybe a stud game to a 4 card game, or then to a 5 card game. You don't always want to keep it just in case it switches. Which sucks, but it does happen occasionally. Everyone's made that mistake, myself included.
Let me give an opportunity, Brian or Dave or Rob. Any of you guys have anything?
Hey, this is Brian. I wanted to switch gears a little bit just to more specifically a dealer's choice tournament. Explain your thought process when it's your turn to pick the game, as far as are you looking to play a game that you're kind of just feeling it that day, or are you more, looking towards what your opponent's weaknesses are, or just what's your overall thought process when you're deciding which game to pick in dealer's choice?
Well, feel I can honestly say feel is basically none of it. Like if I'm feeling really good about a game that day, that's got nothing to do with my deciding on which games to pick. So normally when I'm playing. Especially when I'm playing with people who maybe I haven't really played with before or played very minimal with. I try to follow a pretty specific formula. I don't prefer to give every game choice because I've had a couple interviews in the past, I don't like to give everything away. But initially, for instance, I do like to stick with stud high low no qualifier. The reason why I like clicking that game initially, to me, it's a very basic concept. I think it's the most basic game in the world with principles. You don't, unlike stud 8 or better, where a hand like split kings will obviously have value, not a ton like stud high, but it'll definitely have value. It's a piece of crap. It is absolute stone garbage in that game, and I can't tell you how many people I've seen over the years for whatever reason they play split kings like they're the nuts. I did an interview for on Mike Mattisell's The Mouthpiece, and he was telling me about how he busted I think a $1,500 dealer's choice 3-4 years ago. Some guy who put in about 1 million bets with split kings and somehow backdoored into a 7 low. When he had when there was a 97.5 to a 98% chance that he was going to get half of the whole pot on 4th or 5th Street. So yeah, I mean, people that automatically are playing really high cards, I'm looking not to get knocked out. So if people want to play high cards and I'm always going to get half the pot, that's great. I've got no risk, and I'm going to be chopping a decent amount. But then I'm going to be scooping. When I scoop, I mean, it was 0 risk. So I'm trying to play games with 0 risk. People that don't maybe understand. Maybe basic starting hands and with like split pot draw games or, I'll do that. But then I want to keep mixing around. I want to see if I can find people's weaknesses. Depending how things are going. If I know, like when we get later on to a tournament, maybe there are people I don't necessarily want breaking from my table. So maybe I'll try to keep them around for a tiny bit longer. Depending I know on who might be coming over on what table break, which I just started doing that this year a little bit. I think that's probably pretty difficult to do, but I was trying to pay attention to that when I could. But for the most part, I'm trying to do games where I'm at very little risk and I've got a lot of free roll opportunities.
Any follow-up to that, Brian? Okay. Dave M., do you got anything you wanted to share? There you go. You're unmuted, Dave. Or you're muted. There we go.
All right. Awesome.
Yeah.
With Adam, man, I would just say I'm a fan of you, man. I've been kind of following you ever since you were on TV, and like every year, you have a huge score. And this last one, this last summer, I know that it's 6-handed, but like the final 9 players in that event are like some of the most elite players So I'll assume that was your favorite bracelet, but which is your favorite and why? And can you tell me about this last year's final table with like Nick Schulman and?
I'm aware. Believe me, it was an incredible.
Oh, yeah.
It was a very difficult final table. I mean, even the two guys people weren't aware of. I've been playing cash with Michael McKenna for years, who finished fifth, and then my buddy David Moskowitz. I've been playing with him for the last few years over the Hawaiian Gardens in LA. I mean, he's a so-called amateur, and yet he's better than 99.5% of players who I've ever played with. He's just a phenomenal all-around player. But yeah, my favorite bracelet. It's funny. I don't ever think I'd have a favorite. I think each bracelet had its own meaning to me. I think the first one was when I won the Stud 8 back in 2012. It was a lot of relief in terms of I finally got the proverbial monkey off my back, so to speak.
Right.
It's like, wow, okay, finally got that done. And I really pride myself really on my stud games and my overall mix. So when I won the Dealer's Choice last year, it was like, oh, good, I finally won one. I was thrilled. Like 6 years, it almost seemed like an eternity. Which and nothing should be a given by any stretch, but I think I have a pretty good overall idea where I stand overall in comparison to a lot of players. And sometimes people might say it comes off as cocky or arrogant, and I can see why that's the case. But I'm very objective. It can come off as a little forceful, but I'm very honest and truthful. Like I have an idea which players I don't want to play with. I know which ones I don't mind playing with. Some people think are superstars. Like I want to play them, and some people think this person's not as good. I'm like, no, you're wrong. Like so the two people like the two people like the final table, people had never heard of them. Like, oh wow, I've never heard of these. I've never heard of David or Michael. I'd love to play with those guys as opposed to some name players who I don't want to mention and maybe downgrade. But like those guys, they're brutal. I mean, they're just absolute beasts. I mean, when I initially started playing with Michael years ago, I thought, oh man, I'd love playing with this guy. He's doing stuff. I understood, but then I thought there was some real genius to some of the stuff he was doing. That was much different than what a lot of pros would do in certain spots. And I've come to really respect this play. And David he's as cool as a cucumber. Like when you're playing with him, you never see him get. I've never seen the guy get rattled ever, or get really upset. Like if he's running really bad and just losing every hand when I'm playing cash for them. And the few times I play, and he doesn't play many tournaments. And I mean, and even when he does, he just goes along the flow. It's like whatever. Something I've tried getting much better at. I mean, I still got a ways to go, but compared to how I used to act, he's one of the people I truly try to emulate and act like. Someone I really respect overall, not just in poker but in life. And then I guess winning this year, I guess if you do the whole coin flip, maybe this one in a certain way, it's maybe the fact that only in the 50 years of the World Series, I think only 7 or 8 people have ever gone back to back in an event, and to specifically do it in the 10K Dealer's Choice, which I believe is, and I don't say it because I believe it's the toughest event because you have to play 20 games. You're playing some people's best games where they're just going to they're better than you, and you have to have basic common card sense in games you're not as experienced in. And there's a reason why you're not going to see a big spike in the year because it can be very intimidating when you're playing 20 different games. I mean, in fact, the first time I played the Dealer's Choice in 2000, it's been around now for 5 years. When I played the 10K version of it, I think there were 2 games I'd never played before, but I knew I had a basic understanding of what I should be doing. I don't think I'd ever played pot limit triple draw before, and maybe I played pot limit hold'em before, but if I hadn't played it in like 10 years. As well as 5-card draw. It's just a game that's not played as much. But I have a basic understanding of what I'm supposed to be playing, and I'm not going to get out of line in those games.
Any follow up to that, David? All?
No, man, that's pretty awesome. I guess it's I guess when you're constantly playing in the mixed games like that, you're always up against players that you're respecting because it draws such talent. So you're seeing players like you said, David Moskowitz, obviously an underrated player because he's not obviously as big a name, but I know he's been around for a long time. But all these other guys that you're playing with, you're like amongst the best, So it's like you're playing against all of these elite players too. It's just, man, that's just got to be such a cool feeling, man.
I will say I was starting I was able to get very fortunate. I was able to progress very quickly in the cash game ranks in terms of what limit I was playing. I progressed very quickly. I don't deny this. Like back probably in 05 and 06, I was starstruck by a lot of these players, especially because to me these guys were like athletes at first. Like, oh my god, it's this person. I'm playing with this guy, and that guy, and the more I started playing, you get that starstruck feeling out of you a little bit. Fortune, I don't think is really anybody I really, I guess it'd be great if I got to somehow play with Doyle one more time. That would be awesome if I could do that. I mean, even this year, like this year in the 50K, I was able to play the 50K for the third time this year. Phil Ivey and I were sitting next to each other. We sat next to each other for the first 6, 7, 8 hours or something like that on day 3. And, we were just goofing, joking around, which I've never seen that. You've never seen him talking that much before. But I was talking some personal stories, which I don't really care to disclose. But it's eventually you got to get over that, because if you let people like, oh my god, it's this person, that person, they'll sense it and take advantage of you eventually, and like they should. But yeah, it's eventually it goes away, and then you just try to treat them like anybody else.
Well, and now you're in the world where people are going to be starstruck playing with you, and that might be uncomfortable or weird, but that's sort of the reality of it because of your track record. So I know Carter has a question, but I want to quick quiz you, Adam. All right, just for those of us who don't know all the names of the games, what are the 20 games that you play in the Dealer's Choice?
Oh crap! I got to name all 20 off, man.
How many do you know? Just start giving us the names of as many as you can remember.
If you have a list in front of you, if you can check them off, it might be easier.
I don't. I'm just
all right. Hold on. I want to think this out logically. All right, give me a second. Okay, 5 games of horse. Limit Hold'em, Omaha or better. Raz, Stud High, Stud 8. 8 game would then include No Limit Hold'em, Pot Limit Omaha, Deuces 7 Triple Draw. 10 game would include Badoogie and No Limit Deuces 7. So there's 10 more games left. All right, give me 1 second. Ace the 5 Triple Draw, Badoosie Badacey. Pot Limit Triple Draw, No Limit Single. I already said No Limit Single Draw, right? Yeah, I said No Limit Single Draw. Okay, so that's 14. Let's see. Pot Limit Hold'em is 15. Well, that's really sad. Hold on. If I can't think of this next 10 seconds, maybe I'll just randomly spit them out of the next hour when I'm randomly thinking about it.
And this guy won back-to-back bracelets. I mean, seriously?
Yeah, no, that's.
I'm kidding. It's just an amazing amount of games. It's just an amazing something I can't even put my arms around. Like how do you know and play well 20 different games?
Pot Limit Omaha or better. Big O. Big O's Pot Limit as well. That's 17. Stud High Low No Qualifier is 18. We don't play Archie. I don't know why we don't play that, or Double Board Omaha, or
Ace 5.
I already said Ace to 5 when I listed the draw games. I could look it up as we're doing.
That's okay. That's fine.
I don't think you said Badoosie Badacey.
I think I initially said Ace. I said the draw games. I said Ace to 5. Ace to 5, Badoosie Badacey, and Pot Limit Triple Draw. Those are the first 4 I mentioned. Crap, I can't think of the other 2. All right, whatever.
You'll come up with them. It's okay. Yeah. I'm putting you on the spot. Carter, what did you have?
Sure. So, Adam, I've told all these guys in this chat this story enough times that it bores them. But when I was down there for the World Series this year, I got a sneak peek into some Bellagio Bobby's Room action. It was super, super cool. So the question is involved with that. What's your favorite place to play? And what's like maybe the craziest mixed game session that you've ever played?
I hate to say, I think what's become my favorite room lately has been at the Hawaiian Gardens in Los Angeles. When you're playing the bigger mixed games, there's 2 tables and it's in their own room. It's incredibly quiet. You can't hear. I mean, unlike Bobby's room where they keep the door open, the doors. I mean, it's a window glass, but it's shut and you can't hear anything from outside, which is fantastic. So it's just the people who are in the room, which I really enjoy playing there. I've been fortunate to be able to play in Bobby's room a few times. I've never been able to play anywhere. I don't have the money to play in their biggest game. I don't know if I have it in me to go through the swings that are even that big in that game. But yeah, I would definitely say the Hawaiian Gardens right now has become my favorite, especially when I'm playing in the private room there. And the craziest session I ever had, well, I know the longest session I ever had was about 10, 11 years ago. Was when I was playing No Limit Hold'em predominantly. I was playing a 2040 No Limit Game of Commerce. I played 53 hours straight. The craziest session I had, I remember I had a session once in Atlantic City. It was playing 1-200 mix, and I don't think I'd ever had swings as wild as the one I'd gone through in a session. I think I went from up 5 figures to down 5 figures to up 5, down 5, and somehow I ended up a $6,000 winner, which is never supposed to happen. That's too. I mean, I would just win like 10,000 in like 30 minutes, which you're not supposed to do playing 1-200. It was just really freakish what was going on. I've never. I mean, if that was 2-400, that would be pretty wild for 2-400 to go through 50 big swings 2 or 3 times. I was going through 100 big swings, 100 big bet swings, which never happens. It was a goofy session like 4 or 5 years ago. And I made up my mind. I just saw the session the way it was going. I said, the next time I get to an upswing, I'm going to end near the top of it and call it a night. And that's what I did. And then I played a lot bigger the next day, I remember. Because there were certain individuals in that game I wanted to play with. So, yeah, it was really freakish in terms of I've never just the big bets I was going up and down. I'd never seen that before. It was just like some sort of like standard deviation to the 3rd or 4th level, which didn't seem possible, mathematically speaking. But it happened. So,
John, did you have something?
No, nothing in particular. I was just going to mention the Big O games when he was rattling through his games, but he mentioned those already.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, I saw you come off mute. Maybe that's what it was for.
Yeah, I did pick Big O a lot in the dealer's choice. I've been playing a ton of Big O out in LA. It's a game that they play a lot out in the mixed game. I really enjoy playing the game. It plays much differently than Pot Limit Omaha or better. Certain concepts that you really have to adhere to in Big O, whereas you can get away with certain things in Pot Limit Omaha or better that you're just not going to be able to do in Big O. And people that don't make that adjustment are just going to get crushed in that game long term.
Let me. I want to open this up to make sure. Brian, I can't see. He's on the phone, so I can't see if he's raising his hand or anything. Brian, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
Sorry, I'm picking up my kid at the moment, so I'll get back to you.
do you want to ask any advice about your kids or?
I can't do that one.
I know. John, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask. So, what of all of the games? Which one do you think mixed games could someone pick up and get either the least disadvantage or the most advantage compared to the overall, your average poker player who's not used to playing the games? In other words, which one with a little bit of effort could you increase your skill edge over someone who's new to the game the easiest?
All right, I hear you. There was a similar question like this earlier, and what I would say, I still think Limit Hold'em and Omaha are better. If I were to guess, are the easiest ones to learn. So you play enough, you're going to realize that hands. If people are going to just take really bad hands against you over and over and Limit Hold'em, your results are going to show long term. If someone's consistently playing any ace rag and Limit Hold'em, and you're just you're playing tight solid, you're waiting for the ace king, ace queens, you're going to get the money more. You're going to take some sick beats along the way because that's just the nature of limit. But you're going to get the money much more in the long term if you keep playing better cards on the whole. Omaha had a better, someone who's consistently playing second best hands, someone who's playing hands that really aren't good, hands like ace 3, 10, 9, like an early position. Omaha had a better, hands that just aren't, it's not really good high value. You're going to run to ace deuce. No, when you run ace deuce, they're probably going to have a better high card than you. Or another low card, you just find yourself getting buried a lot with those hands. I think stud games are much more intricate on the whole. I think draw games would be the last route I would go specifically because I think there's a certain meta game that involved. It happens really when you start playing higher and higher in reality, but there is a certain meta game in terms of what you're supposed to be doing. But in terms of basic concepts like deuce to 7, have a deuce. That's one thing I would say. Have a deuce. Some people just don't. It's amazing. I mean, about the only hand I don't play a deuce under the gun with is 3-4-8. And usually I got another 3-4-8 to go with it, so at least I got one dead card to go with it. But even a hand like 3-5-8, I don't play under the gun when I'm playing six-handed. It's just a hand that's just going to lose money long term, in my opinion, from that spot. So I mean, all I can say is, in truth, I couldn't even tell you what books are out there, to be honest with you, in terms of just learning basics. But there's still a decent amount of information, which so that'll just give you the basics. And for the most part, even when I read a couple books back then, and I didn't read many, I thought the books back then at least gave you a basic, like almost like a basic standard of what to start with. Are you going to get like super complex things done? No, because there's just some of the people who are writing this stuff. I mean, no offense, but some of these authors, they can't even give you good complex answers to some of these questions, because I think some of them end up writing because they can't beat the biggest games. Even looking right now, I can see a couple of random books that I haven't opened up in 15 years or whatever. A guy like David Sklansky, he just, if you put him in a bigger game, he's just going to get buried, because even he doesn't know the answers. He's never been able to adjust to bigger games. But in terms of when you're playing low limit, you can adjust by playing just really ABC standard overall. And then, if you start to get the occasion when you can start to play a little bit bigger, you're going to advance and grow your game as it goes on. So, but yeah, I think in general, like I said, I would try to stick with flop games overall. And as that goes on, stud, I would try to veer towards draw games last. Not only because I think they're probably the most difficult to learn, but it's probably, I think on the whole, if I were to guess, they're probably spread the least. So that would be my thought process in terms of that.
So piggybacking on that a little bit, how do you learn? I guess, what is the process that you follow yourself to learn? I know you're a student of the game, and you've got all these games that you're trying to improve on. For you at this level, is there an active learning process, or is it more about getting reps and kind of, working through some of those yourselves? Do you have a learning community, or kind of how do you improve your game, I guess, off the felt, or is it primarily just putting yourself in situations?
Me, I mean, I play. I mean, it's weird. Half the games I've had to learn while playing 1-200, 2-400 mix. I mean, I remember when I went down to Florida for what was it? They had some big series right after the World Series, like 2-3 years ago, and Archie had just been invented. Maybe this is 4 years ago already. They said it was in the mix. I told the guys I'd never played the game before. I said if I can just sit out one round and just watch, and if I can watch somebody play, because usually we're all pretty friendly with one another. So yeah, like I remember I was playing with Rob Mizrachi. He was just able to let me sweat him for like 6 hands. After 6 hands, I was on my own. And I was playing super tight, which I think when any time you play a new game, you're supposed to play super tight. If you expect to be able to play every hand right away, just burn that money. Just try to, what you think is really try to run a really super tight range overall. And, when you play more hands, you'll get more experience. And that'll give you a shot to, and just, again, like I mentioned before, whoever you think the best player to is in the game, watch them play. Look at the hands they're turning over. If they're playing really tight in spots, if they're loose in certain spots. Why is it that person's winning? Why is the person who consistently loses in this game? Why is that person losing? And that's the one thing I would generally say in general, which when I'm watching recreational players, they're not really paying attention to what other people are doing as much, which I think is very important to do.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. As you play all of these games, and obviously there's probably differences among each game, but are there common themes among the biggest mistakes that you see people making? Is it are there themes? Is it generally that people are just playing too many hands, or playing too many hands out of position? There, whether it's bet sizing. What are those themes of the most common mistakes that less experienced players are making?
In limit games, it's absolutely. I'd say the lower limit, it's absolutely playing way too many hands. Tight really is right when you're playing those games. Now, obviously, when I'm playing some of the games I'm playing, if you're playing super tight and you're playing with a lot of players I play with, they're always going to know what you have, so you just can't get paid off. So you have to do things a little bit differently when you play higher. But when you're playing like in the lower limit levels, if you literally know the starting hands you're supposed to be playing, you will print money. And just be tight but aggressive. When you think you have the best hand, bet. Don't be afraid of occasionally you're going to bet the worst hand. It happens. It's like you don't see people getting too many raises. At least I remember. When I first started playing like $3, $6 limit hold'em, for instance, I still remember I have a hand that sticks out to me where someone raised lane position. I remember I 3-bet ace queen. The flop went ace high. Bet all 3 straights. I'm like, all right, I got the nuts. I call him. Somehow that person had ace king, which I would like, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I never got check raised ever in that spot. It was amazing. So yeah, I mean, occasionally you're gonna bet the worst hand, but if you just keep playing very tight, solid overall, you're going to get the money, because I guarantee you. If I had to guess, I don't think my guess times haven't changed really too much. And some of the games you guys playing, you probably see some guys playing a third, 50% of the hands.
Mm-hmm.
They're not dragging in the money long term. I can promise you that.
That's good. Dave, John, Rob.
Hey, this is
Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
This is Brian. So earlier, you had mentioned that a lot of your friends that are no limit tournament players, you tell them all the time that that they should be playing more mixed games, and I think a lot of the listeners to the podcast tend to be more familiar with no limit hold'em and some pot limit Omaha. So for those listeners that are paying attention right now, that if you had a one line sales job of hey, this is why I think you should play mixed games as a no limit hold'em player, what would that be?
2 cards, no fun. 4 cards, more fun.
That's funny. I've said that many a time myself.
No, I mean, people that are playing mixed are generally smiling and happy and having a good time. People that are playing no limit, they're all serious. They're just boring to watch. I mean, don't get me wrong. I play a decent amount of no limit hold. I don't play a ton of no limit hold'em tournaments. I probably play maybe, I don't know, what do I play? Maybe 20 no limit hold'em tournaments a year, maybe, if I were to guess. So I don't play an extraordinary amount by any stretch. But no, I mean, people are just way too serious. They're not having as good a time. And mix, it keeps your brain active, especially when you go from one game, you play 6, 7, 8 hands, go to the next game, play a new game, you keep things fresh. People are generally having a good time, with the exception of maybe 1, 2 that are getting, basically completely clocked in the head. But that happens to everybody from time to time.
Any follow-up to that, Brian, at all?
No, I guess I was looking more for. I agree with them that mixed games are more fun. You're constantly doing different things, and I play mixed games a lot to keep my brain active and thinking about why people are betting, the hands that they're betting, and try to apply them to different games. I was more looking for, like, from a strategy perspective, why would someone who primarily plays no limit hold'em or no limit hold'em tournaments want to start playing in mixed games besides the fun factor?
Honestly, I think the reason why a lot of people have eventually gone from no limit hold'em to mixed games, I really do believe the players. I think it's been sheer boredom. I really believe that's been the answer after a while. They just get bored playing the exact same thing over and over and over, and they really do want to keep it fresh. Or maybe for some people, maybe they think no limit hold'em has passed them by and they want to try something new. But for the most part, I believe it's because of boredom is the reason why most players I know, and myself included, have gone from no limit hold'em to playing mixed games. And they want to try to have at least a little bit of a time. Whereas, like I said, people are just way too serious about themselves and no limit hold'em.
All right, so we're going to cut off the conversation there. We're going to continue this conversation in next week's episode. But thanks to Adam Friedman. Thanks to the panelists for jumping on there. It's fantastic discussion. I learned a ton already, and it's making me more excited to maybe try to play some mixed games in the future, at least in some home game situations. It seems like it'd be pretty fun. As we wrap up here for this week, thanks again to Running Aces Racetrack and Casino. They are our official sponsor. Reminder that tomorrow night, if you're listening to this when it releases, but October 30th, we're going to be doing a conversation on Poker Tells. If you're a member, you can jump into that conversation, and then you'll also get access to the video afterward. Next Wednesday, November 6th, a couple of things. At 6:30 p.m., we're going to be talking about hand histories, looking at some examples there. And then at 8 o'clock next Wednesday is our Poker Stars home game. And that's a growing sort of fun way to connect with people. It's free of charge, but we give away some prizes. 3 copies of the Andrew Brokus book will be going to the top 3 players. So check that out. Get plugged into the newsletter. Go to rec.poker. Sign up for the newsletter. It's the best way to stay connected. If you have any questions, any comments, any concerns at all, reach out to me on Twitter, RecPoker. Reach out on Facebook group, RecPoker, or email Steve at recpokertraining.com. I'm very accessible, very open to answering any questions you have. If you're interested in some poker coaching, we got some of that happening now too. I failed to mention that on the front end. But that's another thing that we're looking at, and I'm starting to put together some offering things. We got some students coming on board. So if you're fairly new to the game, this is a great opportunity for you to learn the game at pretty reasonable prices. We got some group coaching, some individual coaching. I'll do some seminars. A lot of this is going to be the fundamental stuff. Like I'll start with the fundamentals of poker math. Why do we even care about math? And how do we even use it? So before we get into all the intensity of the math, let's just figure out the concepts, make sure you understand kind of the basic constructs of how poker math is important in your tournament poker game. So reach out if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is. Thanks again, Adam Friedman. Part 2 next week. Take care.